Meanwhile, Russia has warned that military intervention in Niger will lead to a protracted confrontation. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that such an intervention would destabilize the Sahel region as a whole. Russia does not formally back the coup, but the U.S. says its Wagner mercenary is taking advantage of the instability.
All right, so what exactly does activating a standby force mean? We're joined now by General Martin Luther Agwai, who is a former Chief of Defense Staff and former Force Commander of the AU and UN Intervention Force in Darfur. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight tonight. So good to see you. Well, let's begin with that very poignant question as to what exactly is the standby force? What does it entail? Does ECOWAS have a standing standby force? Tell us more about this. What does a standby force really mean?
Well, the standby force is a force that has been agreed by both African Union and the regional organization like ECOWAS to have a force that the AU or the regional organization like ECOWAS can use in case of emergency. And the emergency can be natural and or not natural one. And the force is a pledge by different countries in the organization that pledge and keep them on standby should in case they are needed. As the name is, it's just a standby force to be used when it is required and when it is necessary and when the organization that formed the standby force want their utilization.
General Agwai, thank you for your thoughts. Speak to us yet again about the mode of operation when it's time to apply the force. In what phases do we apply the force?
Like I've stated, is that the force can be utilized if there is a natural disaster, let's say, or human disaster. For example, if you have an inflow of refugees and IDPs in a country, and the force can be there to help in the humanitarian activities and protect civilians as things go by. If there is a flood or fire or earthquake or something, the force can be used. And also, if there is an intervention that the regional organization that have kept the standby force want to use them, they can now direct by the mandate that would be given by that organization to the force. And the force becomes a normal military force with the chain of command and with different countries given specific role to play in that intervention.
All right, so General Agwai, I mean, in military terms, when you're given that directive or order to deploy a standby force, what exactly is the process? In military terms, help us understand what this entails, really.
Well, once you activate the standby force, remember that it is not a force that is there 24/7. It's a force that each country that have signed into have prepared a particular number of its own troops with the equipment and the logistic requirement that will be ready for when they are virtually called. As the name goes, it is a standby force. You can activate the standby force without necessarily launching them into any operation. You can, depending on what you want, put them on standby, and they can be on standby immediately. The heads of state want them to be utilized. A green light will be given, and there will be a formation of the headquarters staff, the communication staff, the logistics staff, and everything put in place. And then you will issue the directive that will come from the organization to the troops, to the commanders, and in the chain of command, then action will start based on the mandate that the force will be given.
All right. Now, as the ECOWAS heads of state meet in Accra, what should they be looking at? What should be the touch points for them?
Well, I think at that level that I believe they will look across the whole spectrum, all the other consequences if they decide that they will reinforce for example, if they have imposed a no-flying zone, they will enforce the no-flying zone. They will decide if they want to have direct intervention and cross the border into. They will decide if they want to enforce the closure of the border. They could decide to have a special operation with special forces going to a pinpoint target or pinpoint area within where they want them to operate. They could decide to for the short, like the special operation for a short time, maybe 24 hours only or so, or they could decide to go a full-scale intervention to march through to wherever the target, and I would reckon that the target, if it is a military intervention, is to go to the capital where virtually the command and control of the Nigerians are. But I sincerely believe that, as the name is just to activate the standby force. I don't believe it's going to be direct intervention the next morning. However, it's to get them prepared for. It's just like you traveling with your credit card in your pocket. You are having the credit card. If there is a need for you to use it, you use it. It's not that because you have credit card, you just start using it anywhere. It is only when you have a need for that credit card you will use it. So I think that is what the heads of states will do. They will look at the economic sanctions. How do they enforce the economic sanction? They will look at the diplomatic sanction and pressure. How could they and what would they achieve? They will look at the consequences. Supposing they go in and do not achieve their immediate target, what are going to be the consequences? Could you lead to a possible civil war in Niger? What will be the challenges between the neighbors of Niger with the ECOWAS forces? Remember that Niger also has borders with some people who are not members of ECOWAS. Remember also that there are some former members of ECOWAS that are now under military rule that have said any attack on Niger is attack on them. So there are going to be so many things I believe the ECOWAS head of state will look at, and the consequences. How about the humanitarian thing? If you get into Niger, issue of IDPs and refugees, what happens? So I'm sure they will look across the whole spectrum. And remember that we are in a world today where everything is commercialized, even the forces. I hate to use, but the real word is the mercenaries. There are people who are willing to go and fight your battle for you if you pay them the right amount, or if they strategically, they will stand to gain something. And I'm sure they will look into that. And they will look into the possibility of others coming to fight their proxy war in our region. So I'm sure there are a lot of things they will look into at the end before they could decide on what they will do.
Indeed. Yeah.
and
Thank you.
and how they will use this standby force.
Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts tonight. General Martin Luther Agwai, former Force Commander, Africa Union, United Nations Intervention Force in the Fall. Thank you very much indeed.